come and sit
Oh,
there.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I am coming.
yeah. Well, first, I had some slides here, but I will also read my talk. I am very grateful to the organizers of this unique event, both visible and invisible organizers, for giving me this unique opportunity. I would like to begin by paying my respects to Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda, as succinctly put by C. Rajagopalachari, Rajaji, who was also at one time a governor of his province, saved Hinduism and saved India. But for him, Rajaji said, we would have lost our religion and we would not have gained our freedom. We therefore owe everything to Swami Vivekananda. That is what I have written there. Now let me go on to the thing which I wanted to say, which is that I believe that in addition to being a great spiritual giant, Swami Vivekananda was also a scientist whose insistence on experiment, experience and on rationality, expressed clearly and strongly, is in tune with modern science. The very first sentence of his book on Raja Yoga is, all our knowledge is based on experience. I think that this is the spirit of modern science, which started as an obscure activity nearly 4 centuries ago. And today it encompasses the entire world. By not restricting himself, not restricting experience to external nature, which is the world of modern science, but also encompassing the internal world, he points, I think, to the future for modern science and for humanity itself. I would like to focus on this experimental, experiential aspect of Swami Vivekananda. He also emphasized in his speeches and writings the scientific method in such an exploration. Of course, the Indian spiritual tradition has many paths for self-realization, and his own master was a living example of them. Swami's emphasis was perhaps appropriate to the times and to the audience. I would like to first describe briefly modern science as I perceive it. I will then quote some of Swami Vivekananda's statements in relation to it, emerging from his direct experience and from his vision, and give a few examples of how his perceptions foresaw broadly science as it has grown and science as most scientists see it. I will talk about one interaction with Vivekananda also interacted with some of the most interesting scientific figures of that period. I will talk about one such interaction which I have learned of, that is with Nikola Tesla. I will end with an appeal and a speculation. Professor Murthy also talked about Nikola Tesla in the beginning of his talk. Now, it is not my point that there have never been penetrating insights into the workings of nature around us. It is actually a fact that there have been great insights into the workings of nature around us over millennia and over many parts of the world. They are part of our heritage. However, modern science, that is science as we know it today, is an ongoing process. It began sometime in the 16th century. It was originally centered in Western Europe. The USA is now prominently a great powerhouse, and the entire world is in its thrall. What is modern science? Well, I don't know. You see, I am only a practitioner. Like most practitioners of modern science, I just do it. I don't know what it is. It turns out that there are people who have thought about modern science. You see, so in order to learn about this, I went to an encyclopedia and found that yes, there are lots of very outstanding, great people who have thought about what modern science is. And I just collected a few names. One of them is Francis Bacon, who in around 1600 or so said very clearly that experiment is more important than contemplation. He also argued that science should aim at practical inventions for the improvement of all human life. The The second great man with whom another philosophy of science is associated, namely rationalism, is René Descartes. It holds that knowledge is created by the human intellect, not by observation. A significant 20th century version of this philosophy is critical rationalism, which is explicated by the Austrian British philosopher Karl Popper. Popper rejected the way that empiricism describes the connection between theory and experiment, theory and observation. He claimed that theories are not generated by observation, but that observation is made in the light of theories, and that the only way a theory can be affected by observation is when it comes in conflict with it. In which case, of course, the theory, the observation theory is changed. You get a new theory. Popper therefore proposed falsifiability as a litmus test of scientific theories. Falsification as the empirical method to replace verifiability and replacement of induction by purely deductive notions. Popper further claimed that there is actually one universal method, and that this method is not specific to science. The negative method of criticism, trial and error is that method. Now it seems to me that modern science, with its enormous growth and strength, depends on its Baconian inspiration, namely experiment-based open inquiry into external nature. An early and categorical statement of it is in the motto of the 352-year-old Royal Society of London for Improving Natural Knowledge. The motto is nullius in verba, that is, take nobody's word for it. In the same spirit, but more provocatively and recently, Vladimir Arnold, a great 20th century mathematician, said in an address at a discussion meeting on the teaching of mathematics in the Palace of Discovery in Paris, mathematics is a part of physics. Physics is an experimental science, a part of natural science. Mathematics is that part of physics in which experiments are achieved. Of course, it is also true that our mind strongly predisposes us towards this or that observation, the value to be attached to it, and indeed whether the observation is made or not. That is, whether the observation enters our consciousness as an observation or not. Einstein, the greatest scientist of the last century, said that it is the theory which describes what we can observe. Observation and controlled experiment, formulation of a hypothesis in its description in precise forms or theory, predicting new consequences, our acquiring firm and generally useful knowledge of the workings of the natural world. This is a continuous network. At some stage in history, in some areas of knowledge, and because of human exigencies, one link in this network may be preponderant. The length and the tortuosity of the links may vary. However, the wellspring of science remains experiment. We also often forget that the process of acquiring reliable knowledge, called the scientific method, is not exclusive to modern science, though it is identified with it. Even worse, this scientific method is often confused with science itself. Swami Vivekananda articulated these aspects with typical force and clarity. So let me go to the next slide and say that. Yes. So, see, Vivekananda said, as I quote now, in the beginning of his book on Raja Yoga, all our knowledge is based on experience. This includes scientific knowledge, which is of the outer world, of external nature, and religious or spiritual knowledge, which is of the inner world, of our inner nature. He also says in his book on Karma Yoga, all our knowledge, therefore, secular or spiritual, is in the human mind. This is just after paragraph in which he dissects Newton's discovery of universal gravitation. And he says, we say Newton discovered gravitation. Was it sitting anywhere in a corner waiting for him? No, it was in his own mind. The time came and he found it out. The external world is simply the suggestion, the occasion which sets you to study your own mind. But the object of your study is always your own mind. We realize then that both the Baconian and Cartesian polarities of modern scientific philosophy are already in Vivekananda. Vivekananda describes the process of acquiring knowledge, both of the external world and of the internal world in this way. In acquiring knowledge, we make use of generalizations, and it is in the next, yeah. See, he says, in acquiring knowledge, we make use of generalizations, and generalization is based on observation. We first observe facts, then generalize, and then draw conclusions or principles. The knowledge of man, of the internal nature of man, of thought, can never be had until we have the power of observing the facts that are going on within. It is comparatively easy to observe facts in the external world, for many instruments have been invented for the purpose. But in the internal world, we have no instrument to help us. Yet we know we must observe in order to have a real science. Without a proper analysis of such observations, any science will be hopeless, mere theorizing. He goes on to observe. The science of Raja Yoga, in the first place, proposes to give us such a means of observing the internal states. The instrument is the mind itself. The power of attention, when properly guided and directed towards the internal world, will analyze the mind and illuminate the facts for us. Most modern scientists, and perhaps also most religious people, will not accept this creed for different reasons. The most scientists are actually hobbled by scientism. They believe that the only way anyone can know anything reliable is that of modern science. Moreover, that the content of all that we know is given by modern science. This is the tunnel vision of modernity. This is the phrase which occurs in a book by Houston Smith, the celebrated scholar of religion and a former professor of religion at MIT. Now, the religious people, on the other hand, are generally bound by dogmatic assertions of their particular beliefs. This is another kind of tunnel vision. Swami Vivekananda was, as a human being situated in the external world, well aware of this. He did not shy away from his assertion, which is based on his experience as Ramakrishna's disciple, his practices and experience, which encompassed both internal reality and the realities of the external world, as well as of their commonality. He says, the science of Raja Yoga promises to put before humanity a practical and scientifically worked out method of reaching this truth, proclaimed, for example, in the Upanishads. Each science must have its own methods. I could preach you thousands of sermons, but they would not make you religious until you practice the method. These are the truths of sages of all countries, of all ages, of men pure and unselfish, who had no motive but to do good to the world. They all declare that they have found some truth higher than that the senses can bring us, and they invite verification. In a lecture called Reason and Religion, which is reprinted in the same volume, he says, knowledge of the sciences covers, as it were, only a part of our lives. But knowledge which religion brings to us is eternal, as infinite as the truth it preaches. Claiming the superiority, religions have looked down, unfortunately, on all secular knowledge. And not only so, many times have refused to be justified by secular knowledge. He says, in statements which are very relevant for us, are the method or the same methods of investigation which we apply to sciences and knowledge outside to be applied to the science of religion? In my opinion, this must be so. And I am also of the opinion that the sooner it is done, the better. If a religion is destroyed by such investigations, it was then all the time useless, unworthy superstition. The sooner it goes, the better. Not only will it be made scientific, as scientific at least as the conclusions of physics and chemistry, but will have greater strength because physics or chemistry have no internal mandate to vouch for its truth, which religion has. Then again, what do I mean by reason? I mean what every educated man or woman is wanting to do at the present time, to apply the discoveries of secular knowledge to religion. This, if taken seriously, we can have an explosive effect on religion. What we see today is people are turning away from religion. I mean, they are treating it as an irrelevance. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I do not know. Whether that is the explosive consequence, I do not know. But this is something we should think about. The young Narendranath Datta. So now I will just describe something from Swami Vivekananda's life experience itself, which to me suggests strongly that he was a modern scientist. The young Narendranath Datta was steeped in agnosticism. he became fascinated with the evolutionism of Herbert Spencer and had correspondence with him. He translated Spencer's book, Education, into Bengali. Alongside his study of Western philosophers, he was thoroughly acquainted with Sanskrit scriptures and many Bengali works. According to his professors, Narendra was a student prodigy. Dr. William Hastie, principal of the General Assembly's institution, wrote, Narendra is really a genius. Accepting matter and doubting the existence of the Supreme Spirit, Narendra, as a serious agnostic, would question people who seemed to be advanced in spirituality whether they had direct vision of God. His intellectual energy was married to an equally powerful desire for truth. His search took him to the ghats of the Ganges, where atop an anchored barge sat leader of Sadharan Brahma Samaj, Maharshi Devendranath Tagore, a guru in spiritual matters, father of the poet Rabindranath Tagore. But the great seer was taken aback by Narendra's question, Sir, have you seen God? And tried to assuage him by saying that his eyes resembled that of a yogi and that he should spiritually prosper by meditation. Disappointed and desperate, the young man one day, along with his friends, went to meet Sri RAMAKRISHNA Paramahansa, a somewhat eccentric priest of the Kali temple at Dakshineshwar in Calcutta. At the first opportunity, Narendra put to him the same question. Sir, have you seen God? But this practically illiterate priest, unlike the erudite Maharshi, replied in rural dialect, without mincing words, Yes, I have seen God. I have seen him more tangibly than I see you. I have talked with him more intimately than I am talking to you. But my child, who wants to see God? People shed jugs of tears for money, wife and children. But if they weep for God for only one day, they would surely see him. Narendra intuitively knew that here was a genuine man to whom God was a living reality and not at all a philosophical concept or an intellectual pastime. 5 years of tutelage to Ramakrishna transformed this agnostic materialist, this child in the Victorian age, into the cyclonic monk whom we know. His belief in the experiential origin of knowledge had not changed. It had been broadened by his experiences with himself as equipment. His emphasis on reason had not diminished, as we see from what he consistently wrote and said. Well, there are many ways in which Vivekananda, I feel, was a modern scientist. I would just mention, well, in this article I mentioned 3, but I'll just mention 1. His perception was that modern physical researchers are tending to demonstrate that what is real is but the finer, the gross is simply appearance. Now actually, this is close to what has been happening in the 20th century, at least in physics, as I know and have heard about. For example, we see about only 4% of the universe. This visible universe, and actually as Professor Murthy mentioned, we see only 4% of the universe. At first people thought that much of what we don't see is dark matter. What people now believe is most of what we don't see is dark energy. And the Nobel Prize last year in physics was given to 3 physicists who did experiments to fairly convincingly indicate that indicate the existence of dark energy. The visible universe is mostly empty, consisting of galaxies dotting vast expanses of empty intergalactic space. Each galaxy, so you see, we see only 4% of the universe. Then this universe is mostly empty. This empty universe consists of galaxies, but then mostly empty space. Now each galaxy consists of a very large number of stars. These stars exist in essentially empty interstellar space. Now what are these stars? These stars are hot gas. This gas consists of a collection of atoms running about violently and randomly and occasionally colliding with each other. What is the atom? The atom, which is the basic ingredient of condensed or any other matter, is itself mostly empty. The mass of the atom is concentrated in the nucleus, which occupies typically about 10 to the minus 15th of the atomic volume. The rest is electron cloud, nearly massless. The massive nucleus consists of protons and neutrons. What are these protons and neutrons? These nucleons are 3 quarks tied together with gluons. So these are themselves not very solid objects. These are composite objects most of whose mass actually comes not from the things or not from the constituents, but from the gluon fields and quark fields, which hold these quarks together, and the quantum fields of these gluons. So physical reality is pervasive quantized fields which clump together for various reasons as elementary building blocks. Most likely, these elementary building blocks are not point particles, but are quantized string fields. These string fields, and we believe in 5 varieties of them, exist in 10 space-time dimensions, of which 6 are curled up to an immeasurably small size, less than 10 to the power of minus 19 meters, which is the experimental upper bound for most string theories. There are 4 apparently different basic forces between fields of matter, but this difference is only apparent. The thrust and necessity for our mind, which abhors unnecessary complexities, is to unify them, which appears feasible at distances which are so small as to be perhaps forever out of experimental reach. And the distance of unification, the length scale at which unification is possible, is 10 to the power minus 35 meters. So reality is receding from us. Physical reality, which appears so solid, is receding from us. Mass, which appears so reassuringly robustly solid, is equivalent to energy. And even in biology, we see lots of things. We see flowers, we see leaves, we see trees. But in the last 50 years, most of our effort has been in molecular biology to determine the molecular origins or correlates of these very largely visible things, and these molecular correlates are quite invisible. They are on the scale of a few nanometers or maybe less. Okay, now I just want to say a few things about, one thing I do want to say is that Swamiji said, anything that is secret and mysterious in these systems of yoga should be rejected. Now, you see, this strong rejection of Mysterianism is not alien to the Indian tradition. 2 examples come to an outsider like me. The Buddha said to Ananda, his famous disciple, the Tathagata has no secrecy. Secrecy belongs to 3 kinds of things, O Ananda: to priestly knowledge, to false knowledge, and to prostitutes. Ramanuja himself is reputed to have transmitted the secret teachings of his guru to all, in spite of the threats of damnation. There is a story that he loudly shouted out secret mantras from atop a temple top. Ramakrishna himself openly practiced several approaches to reality. However, there has been a considerable degree of exclusivism in the presumed actual cultivation of spiritual know-how. This seems to be in strong contrast with what I believe, besides the experimental orientation, with the second great strength of modern science, which is its openness. It is perhaps largely because of this strength that modern science, which started as a small trickle, is now a roaring flood tide. Many streams contribute to it. Experimental reality is strongly and visibly networked. Things work the same way everywhere intrinsically. Anyone can learn how it happens and can add to our flood of knowledge. Professor Murthy has already mentioned the interaction of Swami Vivekananda with Nikola Tesla. So I will just say a little bit about that. You see, Nikola Tesla was a very unusual scientific genius. We owe to him the invention of the rotating magnetic field and the alternating current which comes with it, and therefore we owe to him this electrical age. So he's actually the father of the electrical age. Before that, and around that time, Edison was a strong champion also of electrical power, but he was a champion of DC electrical power. Now this, at this time, this appears very mundane to us, but it made a world of difference, I mean, in a literal sense. Now, Swami Vivekananda and Tesla shared a similar gift. They had photographic memories. Swami Vivekananda's glance could take in a whole printed page at a time. Tesla saw in his mind's eye diagrams of complex electrical circuits down to the last detail and would then translate them into actuality. Tesla was a very strange figure. He was a mystic inventor. He believed strongly in the idea that large amounts of energy can be transmitted over large distances without electrical wires, and that this large amount of energy, which he called free energy, exists in space. I mean, now very few people believe in this, probably because we have a little imagination. It is generally lots of crackpots who believe in this, but whatever it is, he believed in this. An unpublished article by Tesla of 1890 called Man's Greatest Achievement has the following sentences. There manifests itself in the fully developed being, man, a desire mysterious, inscrutable, and irresistible to imitate nature, to create, to work himself the wonders he perceives. Long ago he recognized that all perceptible matter comes from a primary substance or tenuity beyond conception, filling all space, the akasha or luminiferous ether, which is acted upon by the life-giving prana or creative force, calling into existence in never-ending cycles all things and phenomena. The primary substance, thrown into infinitesimal worlds of prodigious velocity, becomes gross matter. The force subsiding, the motion ceases, and matter disappears, reverting to the primary substance. I mean, we don't know whether this is true or untrue, but this is what he believed. Tesla had been interested in the concepts of prana and akasha and the traditional relationship between them. He used Sanskrit terminology in his descriptions of natural phenomena. As early as 1891, Tesla described the universe as a kinetic system filled with energy which could be harnessed at any location. His ideas during the following years were greatly influenced by the teachings of Swami Vivekananda. And as Professor Murthy said, they actually met. They met in 1895 through the good office of Sarah Bernhardt, a very famous actress. Around that time, in expectation of his meeting with Nikola Tesla, Swamiji wrote to an English disciple. Mr. Tesla was charmed to hear about the Vedantic prana and akasha and the kalpas, which according to him are the only theories modern science can entertain. Mr. Tesla thinks he can demonstrate mathematically that force, in brackets energy, and matter are reducible to potential energy. I am to go see him next week to get this mathematical demonstration. In that case, while Vedantic cosmology will be placed on the surest of foundations. Tesla failed in such a demonstration, though the two met. But this episode shows Vivekananda's openness to modern science. We know that in 1905, Einstein showed the equivalence of mass and energy, which was one of the consequences of his special theory of relativity, and he quantified that equivalence. I would like to, I would like to conclude with an appeal, which is what the text says, but I don't want to talk about it. But I want to speculate about the grand unification of science eventually, and I hope that it takes place soon in this century. Swami Vivekananda emphasized that the truths of exterior nature and interior nature should both be realized with appropriate equilibrium. We are at a stage in history, as pointed out by many observers, in which their grand unification is essential for the survival of mankind. See, it's not a matter of scholarship, it is a matter of necessity for our survival. The consequences of the extreme asymmetry between them are there for all of us to see. Global warming, species extinction, economic growth beyond the carrying capacity of the earth, they are all clear and pressing signs of the fact that a global disaster is imminent. As appropriate to the times, technological solutions are being explored. I mean, people are saying that there should be carbon credits and so on. It seems natural, at least to me, that the experiential development of the inner world, chitta shuddhi, or development of the equipment each one has, is urgently essential. This is not as easy as it seems. The presently overwhelming power and hold of modern science and its overweening self-belief need to be recognized. See, we sitting here and maybe in some places, we can say many things, but the overwhelming power of modern science, we should recognize that it has an overwhelming power because there is a very large number of practitioners. whole enterprise of science has developed and become an enormous thing over the last 3.5 centuries. Well, phenomenologically, observers point out that there is a world of facts and one of values, that these are non-overlapping magisteria. Einstein said that science without religion is lame and religion without science is blind, and so on. In India, while we have indeed inherited a comprehensive worldview, there are perhaps very few great practitioners of it today. There are many who may be verbally and intellectually distinguished, perceptive, and therefore great exponents of inherited knowledge. I sometimes think that we are deceiving ourselves and the world, believing that a change in the world is coming, noticing indications of it in scattered statements of some great men, and taking them to be straws indicating the way the wind is blowing. It seems to me, however, that the very overwhelming progress of modern science has put in the hands of humanity new possibilities for meaningful exploration of the inner world and integration of all scientifically based experience. There are indications of purely psychic internal states at the physical level. Psychosomatic effects and electrical consequences of meditation are two examples. We as a society, that is, we in India as a society, have a special responsibility. Here again, I think Swami Vivekananda is not only a modern scientist, but a post-modern scientist. In his short life journey, he grew from a vehement and argumentative, serious agnostic to one who experienced and taught others to experience reality without boundaries and emphasized the scientific method. I hope that the ultimate unity he foresaw between the external and the internal states, external and internal takes place before we destroy the world and ourselves. I think it will, because we are Homo sapiens. We have Viveka. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramakrishna, for your extremely interesting talk. Actually speaking, you started of course with topic is yoga, and truly that everything based on experience. The basic topic is science and spirituality, all based on experience, and the mind decides the object. That's the most important part of it. Now, the last point that you mentioned about, it's true, the personification of Swamiji's, and actually speaking on the influences that come from Swamiji's, that at present the grand unification is essential for our very existence. And that is necessary, possibly in all areas of science, we should think in that terms. And I remember once, Mr. Ramakrishna, the grand unification was in different aspects. Abdul Salam was...
But I use the same phrase, grand unification, but I mean something completely different.
Exactly.
You see, I must say that, you see, there is an interesting book by a person whose name should be familiar to many of us here, Ken Wilber. It is called Theory of Everything, and it is a takeoff on the same phrase which is used by many philosophers. Yes. Who they believe that once they find something, that will be the theory of everything. And Ken Wilber, I think, very effectively demolishes that idea.
Because that is the time, because he was using the term and education.
But that is within the context of particle physics.
Yes, exactly.
And I mean grand unification in a completely different sense.
No, this is true. Your grand unification I should understand, because that is one that also fits in with Swamiji's concept. Now I think both the papers are open for discussion. We have about 10 minutes time. First on Professor Murthy.
Really, it is very interesting, and we have been impressed by listening to great scientists who have presented these papers. And I would like to make some observations. It's not a question, sir, but my observation is a quick observation is this. There are two things up there. One is a contemplation and experiment. Contemplation by the philosophers like Vivekananda, and also experiments by the scientists. Both they must be complementary, and hence the contemplation. I mean that the intuitive truths founded by philosophers are to be substantiated by the scientists through experiments.
No, sir.
So,
I don't think
this is how
I don't know. Experiment by experiment, actually Swamiji, I feel, he meant experiment of all kinds, not in the external world. And pure contemplation, whether it leads to veridical knowledge or not, I have doubts. I mean, and at least Indian tradition says it is experience. And then, of course, you can theorize. I mean, you can put it in very nice words. But you have to have experience. That comes first. You can't put the cart before the horse.
I will mention.
Yeah.
If you see for the last few years, whenever the Nobel Prizes are awarded, people are asking, how did you get this concept? The new thing. How did you arrive it? And 60% of the people, they say, I got it intuitively. And I got intuitively, I brought it back down to the laser and conducted the experiments and all the other. So this contemplation, I slightly deviate away from the word contemplation. When the mind reaches to that point, it flashes some of these things. And when it flashes, is a wholesome dissolution. You bring it back, and then subject matter and then conduct the experiments. At the moment, suppose you have some flash of thought, but there may not be adequate equipment at all. Will you say that your observation or the feeling is wrong? You cannot say. You cannot say. A time will come which will prove. That is exactly the reason what has happened in many of the cases. There is a time gap of 1 day, 1 year, 10 years, 100 years for a concept to become a reality. But it is the Einstein himself, he has said, there is intuition and reason. Intuition is the boss and reason is the slave. Unfortunately, now the reverse has happened.
Professor Murthy, I have one small point, and that is, you mentioned about the Darwin's theory and the fallacies of it, at present some fallacies in it. But the point is that Darwin's theory, as far as evolution is concerned, stands correct in the sense that evolution, the concept of evolution was given by Darwin. But the slow, slight, continual changes which Darwin visualized, which you are saying that, for instance, the example that you mentioned, what has happened, that has undergone certain modifications in recent years. That not slow content, even the quantum jump also. That can come within the concept. And secondly, the most important part that you mentioned, that endosymbiosis. It is definitely true that the symbiotic relationship is one of the crucial factors in evolution. That's the question about. But the endosymbiosis, which that the origin of mitochondria you mentioned, and the origin of chloroplast, is both together, the photosynthetic and non-photosynthetic bacteria coming together, getting into the another organism and forming a complex substance. But that itself, now it is being considered, you can consider it, there are different opinions, itself is considered as a product of evolution, as if it is not the survival of the fittest under the ocean environment. That's the way it is now being interpreted too. You can say that it is, after all, a bit deviation from the Darwin's concept.
Sarmaji, I would react like this. You are a professional in the field. So I cannot dispute with you about the biological aspect of the thing.
No, I understand you.
Yeah. But what the general common man understand evolution and symbiotic thing is that everything would have reached a particular point after undergoing transmigrations of one thing from one space to the other state and all the other things. But in the symbiotic process, even the nature, even the environment, everything they are cooperating but not fighting within themselves to destroy. That is what is the point that what I am trying to make.
No, you see, there are these misconceptions between the different groups that often arise simply because of the fact that quite a number of people have taken it for granted that Darwin's concept of evolution, survival of the fittest, means that it is fit for all types of activities, all for survival. But actually speaking, quite a number of authors have pointed it out, that this survival of the fittest is just for procreation. Only for procreation and nothing else. That was ultimately the basis. So naturally things were about. Thank you.
May I raise some questions for clarification? I am a scientist and layman. But what to me is the greatest contribution of science to humanity is that it achieved great amount of definiteness, clarity in the field of knowledge. And this hard-earned treasure, I am not ready to lose. So whatever you do, whatever you say, we are really committed to this analytic clarity. And this, sometimes I get almost on the verge of losing in such discussions. So,
Maybe in this, but I don't think at all they were losing. My worry is the opposite, that we confuse that ability with science itself. I mean, you see, there is okay. I mean, there was a part in my talk which mentioned the frontiers of science. The large, the small, the complex, and the unclear. Now, sure. I mean, if we agree that well, this unclear will be made clear by thinking about it and so on. Maybe it will be, but what generally happens is that most of science functions in a very clear, very limited domain. Most of us actually end up knowing more and more about less and less in a very limited domain of knowledge, which is already given to us. And we are able to do that because of this analytical ability which have been developed over decades. So that will not go. But the worry is that that itself may get confused with the total content of science.
You have referred to that, and I fully agree with you. And the doctrine of scientism, that science is the totality of human knowledge, is definitely wrong. And today scientists are very much aware of it. They do not accept it. I do not accept it. Scientism is not to be confused with science. But at the same time, when the scientists in a very limited field, they achieve absolute clarity, and because they are perhaps the scientists who will not be challenged like you speak on larger issues, you fail to bring in that clarity to this field also. And in that case, what to do? We have to take a decision. Either we remain within the limits of clarity.
I think you should not take them too seriously.
But I give a few examples. Repeatedly we are using Vedanta.
Mukesh, 2 minutes gone. After that, we'll be having Professor Chatterjee summing up the entire proceedings.
Thank you.